I was muted online, I think. Oops. It's okay because we haven't really started yet. Okay. Oh, right. Yep. All right. So this is a global public event, actually. It's led by NASA, and it's mainly designed to encourage your observation, appreciation, and an understanding of the moon. And as you know, it's had an indelible mark on human culture throughout all of history. So we're here to sort of celebrate that. And we are just one, if you'll excuse the pun, satellite agency looking at the moon in conjunction with NASA's overall international thing. So here we are in this building, the Palmer Building, University of Reading. And this is a pre-recorded zoom out of the map that they have. You'll see other events nearby, every one of these little pins, all over the world. This is happening pretty much today and this weekend and the entire month. But there are thousands of other events going on which are like this. And all told, there's probably about 1 million people involved. So thanks for joining in. A little bit about me before we get into it. I'm a planetary scientist, an astronomer. I look at Jupiter and Saturn mostly using big telescopes in exotic places, if I can do that. I look at the auroras, which are like the northern lights on Earth. You saw some auroras in the UK. It's 50-50, isn't it? You might have seen some auroras last year coming as far down as Berkshire. On the right, you have quite a blurry looking image of Jupiter. This is Jupiter in infrared, and Jupiter has auroras as well. This is raw data. You might not see this anywhere. At the top of the planet, you can see it's quite bright. Those are Jupiter's auroras, very powerful. I've basically been around the world in this job, from the UK and then all around the world and back again. My last jobs were at NASA and the Japanese Space Agency. And that's where I first learned about this event, actually, Observe the Moon Night. And I took part in it before, and I just had to carry that on over here in the University of Reading. So before I get on to moons of the solar system, let's have some context about the solar system itself. Here are the 8 planets and a stowaway. You can see 4 inner planets circling the sun in the middle there. Ours is the blue one. And we have 4 giant planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune out there. Sun is not to scale in this image. It couldn't be, because it would be too big. I'll show you on the next slide about that. But one of the take-homes of this is that Jupiter is very, very big compared to Earth, and that will be important in a bit. So this is it to scale. This is the solar system to scale. Earth is barely visible. I have made them rotate. This is an image in UV of the sun, actually, and you can see all the activity of the sun everywhere in this image, actually. And these features, it's all plasma, superheated plasma, and there's on the order of millions of tons per second of material coming off the sun in this way. It's also very, very hot, and it's on its way to Earth at about 1 or 2 million miles per hour as well. So in our group, in our university, we study the impact of the sun, the solar wind, on our system. We even predict when auroras might occur, and they were pretty successful at doing it last year. These are the largest moons of the solar system. I've only put on Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, and Earth's moon. I've shoved on the Earth for scale as well. And what you can really notice here is that although Jupiter's got some of the biggest moons in the solar system, Earth's moon is pretty similar in size, which is, quite surprising. So we do have quite a large moon for the size of our planet. Just for some scale, here's Mercury as well. It's just over half the size of Mercury. And there's Pluto again. I keep putting it there for fun. But you can see it's quite small. Its moon is pretty big compared to itself as well. Moving on to Mars, because we have to skip Mercury and we have to skip Venus because they don't have any moons. But yes, this is one of Mars's moons. It's called Deimos or Deimos. No one's correcting me so far about that. Nope. All right, good. Together, here's another one called Phobos, and they look like a couple of potatoes. They're both captured in one shot here, which is pretty impressive. Fun fact about Phobos, the one that's in the middle here, in about 100 million years, it will get so close to Mars that it will turn into a ring system. And then that ring system will fall down to Mars as well. So it'll be a while yet, so you're not going to be able to see that. Here's Jupiter's. So yeah, this is a bit of a step change now. We're going over to Jupiter. I'll play this. Here are the four you might have heard of before. These are the Galilean moons discovered hundreds of years ago. But I'm adding lots of other moons, all the other ones we know about. There's on the order of 94 other moons orbiting Jupiter. And of all of those moons, my favorite is probably Io. So this is a very smelly moon. It's covered in sulfur and volcanoes everywhere. It's best if you were to look at it in infrared eyes so you can see the volcanoes that I'm talking about. So this is it in infrared. Every one of these bright spots is actually a volcano. There are probably over 200 volcanoes on this moon. And of those volcanoes, one of my favorite ones is probably this one, which these are real images, by the way. This isn't some kind of CGI. This is real images from the New Horizons spacecraft some years ago when it flew by and actually recorded volcanic eruptions on this moon going all the way out into space, which is pretty impressive. And just to tie that in with what I said earlier, the aurora of Jupiter, this actually is one of the reasons Jupiter's aurora exists. It's basically leading to those auroras on Jupiter. Moving over to Saturn, everyone's favorite planet. It's got a few more moons than Jupiter. This animation shows quite a lot more. It basically looks like a planet in a bird's nest or something. If I rotate it on the side, you can see, yeah, it's quite messy. You know what's funny about this? This is 170 moons approximately, but Saturn's actually got 274 moons. So there's about 100 that could have been added to this. So yeah, Saturn is the is the king. But of the moons of Saturn, I'm basically going to show you my favorite moons in the solar system. This one is Pan. I like it because it's embedded within the rings, and it looks like some ravioli. And the reason it's got that ridge around it is because particles from the rings have actually deposited on that moon's surface over millions of years. And so there it is, just being a ravioli. Probably in terms of importance, this is one of the most important ones out there. This is Titan, cool name. Also the only moon with a significant atmosphere, really any atmosphere as you know it. And yeah, this is mostly nitrogen, but on the surface, what we think of as rocks on Earth, on Titan, the rocks that they have, there's no one there, but to my knowledge. And the rocks over there are basically made of water. So their rock is water, basically. And it has methane lakes and basically a sort of a hydrological system in a way. It has rivers and things like that flowing across the surface. So it's a very interesting moon. And this is a very funny moon because it looks like the Death Star, or at least the first Death Star for people that are really into this. This is it to scale. This is Mimas. It's a moon of Saturn, 400 kilometers wide. It looks very much like the Death Star. And you wonder which one came first. Actually, the movie came before this was discovered. So this is life imitating art. I don't know how big the second Death Star was. Like, it wasn't finished anyway, was it? Here's Uranus and Neptune. And I'll be honest with you, I've forgotten how many moons they have, but I think it's about 28 and 16. But these numbers, you've probably seen in the headlines, they always change every other month, and it is actually quite hard to keep up. But of all of the moons that they have, this is probably my favorite one. This is not, this is a very cool moon because of these structures that you see on the outside. There's a cliff on the top there that's about 12 miles high, 20 kilometers high. If you were an astronaut on that moon and you jumped off that cliff, don't know why you would, but if you were, it would take you about 12 minutes to fall to the ground. And you'd be able to think about that decision for 12 minutes, I think. Yeah, it wouldn't be good. I know, it's sad. So this is the tally of all of the moons that we were discussing so far. Earth's only got one. The king, obviously. Whoops, wrong slide. Okay, we've had enough, Miranda. There we go. Yes, all for that. We have the crown king of the solar system for moons. Pretty much in a few months' time, I'm guessing this will change again, and this slide will need updating. But 425 moons. That's not all of them. There's about 400 more other moons as well that orbit asteroids. This is one of them. It's called Dactyl. It's about a mile wide, and yeah, I just love how many moons there are in the solar system. Nearly 1,000 of them, and 10 minutes is not enough time to talk about many of them. But these are the highlights from my point of view. And let me just check the time. Yes, so this. I think what the moon means to me, it's an object that has been there since before humans have existed. Whoops. Before humans have existed, it's been there. Every civilization in the world has evolved with it being there. They've all seen the moon. It's all been a big part of their lives throughout history. But not just in every single culture, all of the cultures, all of the world. Yeah, I just love how, we're seeing the same thing that they saw. And I think that's an interesting kind of connection we have with people in the past. Anyone you've heard of in the past has probably seen the same features you've seen. And I share this picture because I think I shared it last year too. When I used to live in Japan, it's one of the few things you can see in the night sky. And I think we're very lucky to have it. It's a very big moon. As you've seen, it's quite big compared to the other moons in the solar system relative to its parent planet, Earth. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Our next speaker is Cong and she'll be talking about the moon in Chinese culture. And Cong is a language lead expert in the University of Reading. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Cong Li, and I'm the language teacher, as James said, and I'm also the language lead for Mandarin Chinese. I work at the Department of Languages and Cultures. It is a great pleasure for me to share with you of the moon in Chinese culture. I will divide my talk into, I will start with the myth about to relate to the moon, and then talk about the moon in Chinese culture, and then the philosophy, and especially the last one, the celebration of the Moon Festival. I think, I do not know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think China probably is the only country who has a festival that's getting to the moon, right? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, okay, yes, as I said, that we're gonna start with the myth that relate to the moon. I have a question to the boys and girls here. Right, who creates the word in your knowledge, in your, okay? God, yes, God created the word, and he will say, let that be light, and let be the light, okay? But in China, there is, we have a mythical figure called Pangu, okay? Before that, the universe was like, years ago, before the world was created, the universe is like a big giant egg. and where Pangu slept. He slept for a long time, and then one day he woke up, and he break the egg, and he was separated the shells. The upper shell has become lighter and become became sky, and the lower shell became the earth. So he held it up, the sky, the upper shell became the sky. He held it up, and after 18,000 years, he died. And after he died, his left eye became the sun, and his right eye became the moon. So that's the Chinese character, sun, on the red, on the top is the sun. Okay, that's how that the character represent today. And then we have the moon. Okay, so that's how the word, how the moon was created in Chinese culture. And then there are also other legend relate to the moon that is talking about the marriage and the love. Unlike the Western culture, there were love and the marriage were, there was a Jupiter, with a red arrow. But in China, the Chinese, there is also a matchmaker or a matchmaker. He is called Yue Lao. So we know Yue as the moon. The Lao is old man under the moon. Because in Chinese culture, we believe that marriage was made in heaven, but was prepared on the moon. The old man, which is the god of matchmaking, yeah, he stood under the moon on a certain day, and then he received the marriage book. He tied it with a red string. Okay, so not the arrow, but red string, and to bind the two lovers together under their in their ankle. Okay, so that is another myth, and even now, okay, we'll see the bright moon night. You can see that there is a figure. That's when I was little. My mom always said, look at the moon. There is a man called Wu Gang. He is the woodcutter. He wanted to become immortal, but he was banished to the moon because the Jade Emperor was fed up with him. He's always made excuse not to do work. So he was banished to the moon, and he has to cut the osmanthus tree. Excuse my pronunciation, not right. Okay, so it's eternally. If the tree regenerates itself after each blow. Okay, so the Wugang is there. That is a legend, probably the most important, the most well-known legend about the moon is the moon festival. Okay, it's related with the brave archer called Hou Yi, because there was a long time ago. There were two suns. There were 10 suns alternate each day. But one day the 10 sun came out all together. So the world was become, severe drought. And so the brave archer shoots 9 suns. In order to reward his bravery, the Western empress, they gave him the elixir of immortality. But his wife drank it by accident. His wife is Chang'e. Okay, we're gonna come to that later. It's Chang'e. She is the goddess of the moon. And with him there is a jade, a rabbit. Okay, so that was sadly he has to separate from his husband. Okay, and we're gonna come to that the moon festival later. He's the goddess. So moon festival, we kind of pray to the Chang'e. Okay, now we look at these are the legends. What does this, as we say, the, Chinese, the moon has a very, very deep, strong influence in Chinese people's life. Lots of legend, lots of the literature also talk about the moon. And so the moon in Chinese culture is represented with yin. Yeah, because we know that yin and yang, the Taoism has the yin and yang. The word was created with a little balance. But the sun represents the ultimate yang, and the moon is represents the feminine and yin. Okay? There are lots of literature. You can see it's talk about the room. The moon is the root of all yin, and also that is connected with the purity, beauty, and the tenderness. This is the Book of Songs. I really love that. The moon rises bright and clear. That beautiful lady is lovely and fair. It's really it's a very, very nice from the Book of Songs. And there are also some other poems also talk about the moon and give some kind of feelings of loneliness, homesickness, and also like nostalgia. What's the word? Nostalgia. Yeah. So yes. So it's kind of it's especially when the round moon. Okay. For now, for me, I'm separated from my family in China, but we come together. We look at the round moon. We share the same moon. We think about each other. So that's talk about the homelessness, represent that. And there are also kind of symbolize a reunion and togetherness as well. Okay, we're all blessed with longevity. Although far apart, we still share the beauty of the moon together. So that's the moon in Chinese culture. There are so many different representations of our feelings and with us. Right, then we talk about the philosophy of the moon. Okay, Chinese philosophy of the moon. It's mainly looking at the waxing waning of the moon that symbolize the life ups and downs. Okay, and also it's looking at although the sun, although the moon had constantly moving, but the disappearance and the reappearance symbolize the life circle of life, and also like incarnation. Okay, and we do not like in Chinese culture, we do not like everything that's to 100%, because when everything is like the cup, when you pour lots of the water, enough water, then the next will come out. So it's like the full moon. If it becomes the roundest, the fullest, and then it will be, sadly, something will be kind of, we're getting imperfect, okay, sooner. So the good thing implies the bad thing will come. Okay, so that is talking about the philosophy. Yes, and also, yes, we're talking about the Chinese Moon Festival, okay? But before we're looking at the Moon Festival, I would like to give you a little bit background about the Chinese calendar. Many years, before there was people were saying Happy Chinese New Year. There were some recent years, they were saying Happy Lunar New Year. Okay, so I would like to say the Lunar New Year is not the Chinese New Year. Okay, the Chinese New Year has a special calendar. It's not just based on the lunar calendar. Okay, it's combination of the lunar phases and with the solar year. And each month we have is based on the moon, because the moon, yue, also means months in Chinese language. It has 29 to 30 days. And there is each year, the lunar new year is about 354 days and 11 days shorter than the lunar year. But how do Chinese people kind of to make it synchronized? So we have the leap months, okay, and that was as extra months was added, approximately about every 3 years. So this year, 2025, is a very, very special year. It has 13 lunar months. So we repeat the June, okay, repeat the June. And so this Chinese lunar year, it actually has 384 days. Just because our we calculated our festivals and everything is calculated by the lunar calendar, so that's why our New Year is different, and our festival is also different. The date actually is not fixed. So, like for this year, the celebration of Moon Festival, the Moon Festival is always on the 15th of August. It's based on lunar calendar. And so it's the night of harvest moon. The moon is the fullest and the roundest, the brightest, and then the roundest. This year, it's Monday, the 6th of October. Okay. But how do we celebrate that? We pray to we appreciate the moon and remember there is a goddess has flew to the moon called Chang'e, and we also eat the moon cake. Okay, and so that's the how it's very 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 brief introduction about the moon of our Chinese culture. So before I end, I would like to give you a mission that was given by the mission controller to the astronaut in 1969.
Among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning is one asking that you watch for a lovely girl with a big rabbit. An ancient legend says a beautiful Chinese girl called Chang'e has been living there for 4,000 years. It seems she was banished to the moon because she stole the pill of immortality from her husband. You might also look for her companion, a large Chinese rabbit, who is easy to spot since he is always standing on his hind feet in the shade of a cinnamon tree. The name of the rabbit is not reported.
Thank you so much. I hope you did see the rabbit in the end. I know they're pretty busy. But... Okay, so our next speaker is Professor Anne Lawrence Mathers, who's a professor in medieval history in the university, and she'll be talking about the medieval moon. Thank you.
Be afraid. As you just heard, I'm a medievalist. I am way out of my depth tonight, but anyway, I am going to take you back to the Middle Ages, to be more precise, Western Europe in the Middle Ages. But don't worry, it's only for 10 minutes, and then you'll be back with modern science again. So then, was there such a thing as the medieval moon? The title might invite you to think, well, all they were interested in was superstitious ideas, fears about the full moon driving you mad, or that sort of thing. I'm going to say, well, yes, people in the Middle Ages did see the moon in ways very different from the ways we see it now. But of course, as James emphasized when he was talking about moons around the universe, as you've just heard about the moon in Chinese culture, when you look up in the sky, basically everybody sees the same moon, assuming it's visible, looking pretty much the same, which is what the image of the crescent moon on the right-hand side of this slide is about. So observing the moon from medieval Europe, they saw the same thing in the sky, but it was a different sky. In a way, it was a much more human-centered sky, because their map of the cosmos is what you've got in the left-hand side of this image. And you can see a medieval map of our world put there in the middle. You may also be able to make out that it's separated from the spheres containing the known planets by colored bands. Those bands symbolize the elements making up the material Earth. And the idea was, and of course, you know, at that time it was completely true, no human being could get beyond that material barrier. That gave the moon an incredible importance, because through being so close to the Earth, being the size, as you heard in James's talk, of a small planet, and being just outside those layers of the material elements, the moon was a kind of mediator between the planets and their spheres and material life on Earth. Because unlike the Earth, which is the zone of change, decay, growth, birth, and so on, the spheres of the planets were not subject to that kind of change. They moved. Remember, the Earth is at the center and stands still with everything else going around it. So those outer spheres move, but they're not subject to change. The moon plays the incredibly important role of transmitting their powers as they move in their patterns around the Earth down through the zones of the elements, driving life on Earth. There was a theory put forward by an Arabian scientist in the 9th century that energy, heat, life, and change on Earth is driven by the heat generated by the motions of the planets and then modulated as it passes down through the sphere of the moon. You may be thinking, well, okay, fine, they had ideas about the structure of the universe. Did they actually go out there at night and observe the moon? And the answer is yes, in different parts of the Mediterranean world and then Western Europe, from the time of at least the ancient Greeks, if not before, onwards, they were not just observing the moon, but recording it and using instruments to do so. And in the middle of this slide, you've got an image from a manuscript made in Paris for the Queen of France, Blanche of Castile, who had come to France bringing specialized astronomers with her from Spain, which was a border zone where Islamic culture, drawing on Egyptian, Persian, Babylonian, and ancient Greek culture, met Western European Christian culture. And you see on the left-hand side of the slide, the kind of table that was drawn up based on those observations. And you may be able to see, if you have good eyesight, that although we're in the 13th century, they're already using Hindu-Arabic numerals, which was something very new when they were first introduced into Western Europe, maybe late 11th, more likely 12th century. And maybe surprisingly, medieval England was one of the first places outside of Spain to show interest in them. But they were challenging. I know this is not about the moon, I just love these stories. When Hindu-Arabic numerals and all that comes with them were introduced into the medieval Christian world, we have letters from priests and bishops being taught this stuff, saying things like, why have a 0? how can a thing be nothing? What is the point of zero? And the answer was, well, it makes your sums an awful lot easier. But to get your head around that, you also had to understand place value. So another nice letter is another bishop saying, what do they mean, columns of figures? A column is a bit of a building. Once they had got their heads around that, then they could use very nice instruments like the thing on the right, the astrolabe, which is being held up by the shaven-headed priest in the middle slide there. And you can do genuinely accurate observations of elevation above the horizon, and then using the complicated dials around the outside and on the back of the instrument, you can set it for your location and for the date, and you end up with an accurate reading of the location of that planet in what was becoming an international system of astronomical recording. And James will correct me, but it's still in use, the idea of having the ecliptic and measuring in degrees around the ecliptic and then measuring up in degrees from there and so on. It's still a kind of international basis for this kind of stuff, however far we have come from all of this. There were discussions, like any good scientist, they raise questions and they set out to answer them. One of them, which starts way back in at least the 4th or 5th century of the Common Era, was, well, what is moonlight? The moon is described in the Christian Bible, hijacking the Jewish scriptures, as being created to give light at night. Does that mean that it has its own light? The answer, of course, was no. It reflects the sun's light. How did they know that? Because of the way that it visibly changes in the sky, depending on its angle to the sun. And that's what you've got in this 12th century diagram from an English manuscript up here. It's not to scale, and they have left the Earth out of the diagram because it would get in the way. The Earth ought to be in the center between the moon and the sun in a lot of this. But the point is here to show you that as the angles between them change, so different sectors of the moon are lit up. And as was pointed out, that shows that the moon's light is actually the sun's light, not the moon's own light. They also, from very early on, asked, well, what is an eclipse? How can they happen? And this was where medieval churchmen were very keen to show their expertise and to show that they understood this stuff much better than pagans. It was said by priests that pagans feared eclipses because of a fear that something terrible had happened to the sun or the moon, and they would never come up again. One legend had it that a great dragon, maybe not, had it that a great dragon might eat the moon. There were stories of terrified people climbing trees to shoot arrows at the moon or where they thought the moon was in the hope of shooting down the dragon. How true that is and whether it's just a slur on pagans, we don't know. The image that I'm showing you may look as if people did think there was a dragon up in the sky and it had something to do with eclipses. In fact, it isn't, and I will try to explain. But do you see the nice, clear way that these diagrams sort of show you the relative positions needed to cause an eclipse? And you get nice lines showing you that for the eclipse of the moon, what you need is for the light from the sun up there top left to be shaded by the Earth in the center, so that the moon, too small and blue in the black triangle, will be in the darkness. And then in the other image, for some reason with its caption written upside down, it should say, figure for an eclipse of the sun. Sol is the sun. You can see what's going on, right? That the light from the sun here, top right, is being blocked by the moon. And you can see the moon is accurately fully lit in gold on its sun-facing side. Whereas from the Earth, all we see is the shadow cast by the moon. Not only that, but as early as the 8th century, I think this is incredible, as early as the early 8th century, the monk Bede of Jarrow up in northeastern England was aware that solar eclipses in particular were differently visible depending where on Earth you were, and that there was such a thing as what we would call the path of totality. He was so fascinated by the moon that he did special research on tides, which I will come on to in a moment. The dragon head things, that is a way of making an astronomical concept more memorable. Eclipses, as I'm sure you all know because you are way more scientific than me, can only happen not only when the sun and the moon are in specific positions in relation to the Earth, but when their paths meet one another on the band of the visible path of the sun, known as the ecliptic. And the points where the moon's path and the sun's path intersect were known to medieval astronomers as the head and the tail of the dragon. And they're always theoretically opposite to one another. You can see that the two heads are opposite to the pointy tails in these diagrams. And it's a way of reminding you about the fact that there is an extra condition required for eclipses. And that's why they can only happen at certain times of year. How does the moon affect the Earth? Well, based on the concept of the tides, and from very early on, scientists and fishermen, farmers, almost everybody was aware, if they lived anywhere near the sea, that the moon had a relationship to the tides. Exactly what that pull was and how it worked was debated. My favorite theory comes from, again, another Arabian philosopher scientist who used geometry as well as beliefs about the powers of the moon to calculate not only that the moon would pull the ocean in a particular direction, but also that that would cause a bulge in the surface of the ocean when the moon was particularly close. Now, so far, so scientific. Less so was the idea, started possibly by the ancient Greeks, that tides occurred everywhere around the world at the same time. It's based on the belief that all oceans and bodies of water interconnect, as you can see in the 15th century map of the world, in the right-hand side of this image. I didn't use the famous Hereford map of the world because I think this one is even better. It was drawn in Venice by a monk who'd been having conversations with Marco Polo and actually knew about China and Japan. I don't know, can you pick out where we are? The British Isles are there. It may be a clue if I tell you that in this map, south is at the top. So down here is north, and that puts west over here. And you may pick out Italy. And here is us. Still, just as we were for Bede back in the 8th century, stuck out on the very edge of the known world. That does not mean that they thought the Earth was flat and you would fall off. I know that is a myth that dies very hard, but trust me, it is a myth. I know they drew their maps flat, but basically so do we. If a flat map proves you think the Earth is flat, then we think the Earth is flat. The reason that people feared that they might fall off is they didn't have the concept of gravity. So they thought, well, once you get a certain way past the equator, you're going to fall. Because what would keep you on the Earth? What Bede did was get research assistants, as it were, to time high tides and low tides down the east coast of England, and tracked it and showed that there was a regular pattern and that you could actually predict when high tides and low tides would come at different locations down the east coast, thus proving that all those ancient Greek philosophers have been wrong, which I think is kind of nice. Less scientifically impressive on the left, you've got the idea that the moon, like the sun, has power over living bodies. In this case, sea creatures. You may be able to, this is meant to be an oyster with pearls inside it. And you can see that it kind of shuts up when the sun is in the sky, but pops open and casts out its pearls when the moon exerts its power. That led to beliefs about when it's a good time to cut down trees, when it's a good time to plant plants, because the power of the phase of the moon affects all of that. Finally, does this mean that the moon affects humans? And the answer, of course, is yes, because the human body, as Greek philosophers and medics had said hundreds of years before, contains flows of liquids known as humours. The most obvious one is blood, but you also have bile and phlegm. And the moon can pull on all of those. It also, as I said back at the beginning of all of this, receives and moderates the powers of all of the other planets. And your body is a kind of mini universe. Each bit of your body is linked up to a constellation of stars symbolized by a sign of the zodiac. This was made in France again in the 15th century for the brother of the King of France. And it's a visual reminder of which bit of your body is linked into what constellation and what star sign. And the idea is that when a medical treatment affecting your blood or the flow of your humours is going to be delivered, you need to know whether the moon is going to be beaming the powers of the cosmos down onto that bit of your body. So come the printing press, late 15th century, one of the things that you all dashed out to buy towards the end of each year was the almanac for the coming year. And what the almanac tells you, as you can see over here, is how many solar days you've got in each month, a little proverb about how to keep healthy and look after yourself, and then down here, a lunar calendar telling you when the phases of the moon are, and if you can follow all the symbolic language and Gothic script here, it'll tell you what zodiac sign the moon is in day by day, so that you know when is good and when is bad to have medical treatment on different parts of your body this month. You can still buy them. They don't give you that detailed information, but I hope I have convinced you that in amongst some views that we would definitely frown upon, they were doing some real science.
Thank you very much. As you probably saw on Teams, which you might want to mute, the sky is nice out there. I was just checking.
Hello, Reading. I'm Dan Tani. I'm a former NASA astronaut, and I am thrilled to be talking to you on this Observe the Moon evening. I am so sorry that I cannot be there in person, but I didn't want to pass up this opportunity to talk to you, so I hope it's okay that I send you this virtual greeting. You know, I have probably driven right by Reading, but I've never had the opportunity to stop in. And that's a real shame because Reading is actually one of the places that I've always wanted to visit. Let me explain. For years, I've been listening to a radio show from Canada called As It Happens, and they have a tradition of referencing every place in Great Britain by its distance to Reading. It started as an inside joke, but now it's been going on for about 50 years. So I don't know if you know how famous you are in Canada and in the US. When I was about 6 or 7 or 8 years old, growing up in Chicago in America, I was obsessed with the moon. Well, that's because pretty much everybody was obsessed with the moon because we were building rockets and we were going to send people up there. On clear nights, I would look up at the beautifully lit orb and imagine what it would be like to actually be on that surface. And then how amazing it was that we were going to send people all the way up there. It was the era of Apollo, and I just couldn't get enough of rockets, astronauts, spaceships, and the moon. The moon took on much more meaning than just our orbiting satellite neighbor of rocks and dust. The moon became a physical representation of my hopes, dreams, and inspiration. To look up at night and think, we're going to go there, was thrilling. I want to show you an amazing photograph that I found in my mother's keepsakes. I recognize the photo of me playing with my cousins. We would build forts out of blankets and chairs, but only when I read her handwritten description on the back did I realize the significance that this photo would have on my life. It was almost like she could look into the future. I didn't think back then that I'd ever work in space, let alone be an astronaut. But when I look back, I can see that the dreams that I had, the imagination that filled my mind, and the adventures that I desired to explore new horizons were all a result of my obsession with our orbiting neighbor. After Apollo, I finished school and went on to university where I studied engineering and eventually worked in the aerospace industry. Unbelievably, I actually became an astronaut. But by the time I became an astronaut, the mission had changed since I was a child, and we were no longer going to the moon. We were building and living on an international space station. Now, living on the space station was fantastic, orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, looking down at our beautiful planet, and floating around in a world-class laboratory. The space station program has made amazing advances in our understanding of how microgravity affects machines, our bodies, and other scientific processes. But very soon, we are going back to the moon. NASA's Artemis program will return people to the surface of the moon, and this time we intend to stay longer than we ever have before and do much more research and science so we can prepare to take the next big step to Mars. So I'm hoping that the children of today can use the moon as their source of inspiration, dreams, and motivation. The young people gathered here tonight might even be part of this amazing mission. Maybe building parts for the spaceship or writing computer programs or doing the research. It may sound like an impossible dream for the children living in Reading, but it was also an impossible dream for me growing up in Chicago. So hopefully you can look up tonight and see our beautiful neighbor. And remember that 12 people have walked on that surface. In a few years, we're going to add some more people to that list. And more years after that, maybe one of you will be stepping off a rocket and onto the surface of the moon. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Again, I wish I could be there in person. Hopefully on a future Observe the Moon night, I can come and finally visit Reading in person, one of my life goals. So thank you very much. Enjoy your evening, and I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
A show of hands, who heard about that before? No, I'd never heard about it. The distance from Reading thing. Yeah, 50 years apparently. Yeah, thanks. Maybe scroll down to 384,400 kilometers. That's the mean. It's a little bit closer than that today. It's a supermoon in a few days, so plus or minus 10,000 kilometers. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so we're about to split the event in a sense. But first, I would like to recognize that the Reading Astronomical Society are outside, and if you want to get involved in any kind of astronomy in this region, there's their website. This is going to be on YouTube as well, so you'll be able to double check this website. And here are all the meeting dates. And I think it's in early or lower early. I honestly don't know the difference yet. Thank you to all the volunteers. Look at that huge list of people involved in this event. It's just fantastic. This wouldn't happen without all of your help. Actually, could we have a round of applause for all the volunteers? But it's not over yet. So we're going to split up. You're welcome to stay here, or you're welcome to go outside, or you're welcome to come back inside after going outside. We have a lunar live stream from Cyprus coming in, and that will be led by Lucinda, who's the Education and Outreach Officer at the Royal Astronomical Society. Did I say that at the beginning or in the end? I'm not sure. Oh, okay, I said it. Yep. Also have the President of the Royal Astronomical Society here, over in that corner. We have Brian Skidmore as well, who is working with the Lunar Pathfinder mission. And outside we have the telescopes, and you're really welcome to depart now or stay here. If you hypothetically, if you all departed at the same time, the lines would be long outside. So there's really no rush. It's up to you. So let's see. Oh yes, and we also have a demonstration desk on the way out as well, so you can actually feel the moon. It'll be explained when you get out there. All right, okay. I will now hand over to the very capable hands of Lucinda. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Don't worry if you need to get up now, and if you want to head out to the telescopes, now is a really good time. So we can give you like 30 seconds to leave your seats. If you want to stay and enjoy the room and warmth and comfort, you're more than welcome. And of course, you can come back as well. You can come back in. We'll be here for about an hour. So don't worry if you get cold outside. You can come right back in. Do you want me to do this? Yeah, we're going to go here. So, no, actually, we're just getting things ready to go to Cyprus. So if you do stay with us, we are still going to be looking at the moon live, but where we can always guarantee clear skies. Yeah. I'll bring him in. I'm just going to change. It's pretty warm now, yes. Shall I put it on? Okay. Agapios, are you there with us? Are you here with us from Cyprus? Just waiting for you to turn on your mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. Greetings from Cyprus.
So what do you have for us here?
Well, I hope to be able to share with you a wonderful view of the moon. We've had excellent conditions tonight, and I have everything set up here. The telescope is live streaming already on YouTube and into this chat as well. And it's just been an incredibly crystal clear night here, and the view is just amazing, as it often is where we are. Anyway.
I would love you to share with our audience here in Reading. Do you have any pictures of where you were joining us from? Because you're at Troodos Observatory, right? Which is, by the way, Agapios is an astronomer. He does this astrophotography. He works the equipment at this amazing new observatory near Mount Troodos in Cyprus. I was hoping you might be able to show us this beautiful observatory that just opened up. It was in June or July of this year.
Yeah, that's right. July, we've had our grand opening. We've been having people coming over since July, and it's been really incredible. Just let me work in the background, and I'll pull up some pictures and share them for you in a bit. We are just to the east of the summit of Troodos mountain range here in Cyprus. And we are 1,250 meters above sea level. It's clear up here. It's just wonderful. And ever since we've opened up and I've been able to run observations here with the telescopes, it's just an incredible location. Highly recommended for anybody who wants to visit.
You put me to shame there. Troodos. I'm going to try to say it. Troodos, not Troodos.
That's perfect, actually.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your telescope while you do that? If you can multitask, I'm sure you can.
Of course. Let me just see. Can you see it? It's right here. So I hope, let me try that.
Yes. So we don't.
How's that? Is that better?
Let's switch to that.
Okay, so the main telescope in the observatory is a 20-inch reflecting telescope, and it's housed inside our beautiful 6-meter dome. We've been able to have so many people come up here and enjoy the view. We run nighttime observing sessions twice a week, and everything we've been able to observe so far has just been incredible. We're able to see details in galaxies and nebula, and the moon, of course, looks just amazing through this instrument. And yeah, it's been really great fun.
Excellent. Do you have any pictures of the observatory?
Sure. Let me just work in the background here for a bit, and I'll come back in a few minutes and share some pictures with you.
Okay, you know what we'll do, because we have a couple of speakers here today that are going to do a talk. So I'm not sure which one of you want to go first, but maybe we could switch to that really quickly and then come back. Yeah, we have Brian here and we have Mike. So which one of you want to speak first?
I'll go first because we're going to get back to the telescope.
Yeah, we will. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Who we have with us is Professor Mike Lockwood, who is here at the University of Reading in charge of space and environment physics. And of course, he's also the president of the Royal Astronomical Society. So we're going to get ready for your talk, Mike.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a man called Cassini. And Deachin can find the slide. It's here, but it's not up there. Okay, no pressure. Here he is. Okay, Giovanni Cassini. Now, sounds Italian. Actually was born very close to Monaco, so just about in Italy. But you quite often see him referred to as French, and I'll explain why. In fact, that's him at the Paris Observatory, which he set up. That's one of his telescopes, and that's his signature. So we do know quite a lot about him. So I think I can move things on. This one. Okay, so yes, here we are, Reading, okay? And he was born down here in Perinaldo, a little village. I think I've got a picture of it. There he is. That was his birthplace. So just in Italy. And he went to Bologna, okay? And when I asked Google Maps to show me the path, it gave me somebody walking there and told me it would have taken 104 hours, okay? But actually, Cassini came from a quite wealthy family, and he was joining a very aristocratic patron in Bologna. So he almost certainly actually got a horse to get there. But actually, I don't know what Google Maps is doing, but it's not going to take 104 hours to walk that far. It's going to take a lot longer. Okay, so he went to Bologna, and here's a picture of Bologna here. And he became very famous for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons was he made a hole in the roof of this rather wonderful basilica in the center of Bologna. He really did. And that hole is there. And it was made specifically to allow sunlight to stream through. And at noon every day, that sunlight traces out a meridian, okay? And it's called the Cassini meridian. And here you can see the line that it follows over the year. And this actually made him very, very famous. And by this time, he was working for the Pope, but he got special permission to go and work for the King of France, because he was very interested in the meridian, and he was going to set up the Paris Observatory. And he asked Cassini to do it. So he had to take the trip to Paris. You'll notice by now he's been the patronage of the King of France and the Pope, so he traveled in a coach. But it took an awful long time to get there. Okay, so there he is in Paris, and there's a picture of the observatory early on. That tower is called the Marly Tower. He had it moved to the observatory, and essentially it was to hold a lens. Okay, so the detector was down on the ground, but it held a lens up there. And the Paris Observatory is still there today, no longer out in the country like it was then, but they still love building towers. This is Meudon, the solar tower. They make solar measurements there. The idea is to get above the turbulent air above Meudon, which is down their side, a little bit further out from the center of Paris. So why am I talking about Cassini? Well, Cassini tonight in particular. Cassini made what is generally agreed to be the first scientific map of the moon. And here it is, okay, on the left, alongside a modern picture of the moon. And there's one feature that I just wanted to point out about this. It doesn't really look like the moon that much. It's quite stylized, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But I want to just point out one feature. Now, I don't know if Cassini was responsible for this or his engraver, who's this chap, Melin, in the bottom corner here. He looks a bit impish, so I think it may have been his doing, because there is a person in his map. If you look very carefully here, I'll blow it up for you. She's called the Moon Maiden, okay? It's not a man in the moon. No. Well, maybe he was drawing on the Chinese myth. I have no idea. But there it is. And I think the plan is now, if we could go to Cyprus to see if they could focus in on that. Shall we try to do that?
Yes,
Would you be able to do that for us? Would you be able to find the Moon Maiden for us tonight in Cyprus?
Yeah, sure. We can point it out. It's already on the live feed.
Okay, how do we do that? I thought he'd been prepared. Did he know? think it's down. Yeah, on the left, about at about oh, it's up there. Yes, he's right. He's absolutely right. That's it there. Yeah. There we go. So how they turned that into a moon maiden, I have no idea, but they did. Okay. Right. So if I could come back. Thank you for that. There we go. That's the bit of the moon. And we'll find it again on Cassini's map. There we go. Okay, so having looked at a very stylized old map of the moon, I thought I'd take a look at, oh, we're going backwards. At another map of the moon, and this is by a little known astronomer. She died very young, unfortunately. She was called Marie Clara. I think we've got a Clara in the room. Oh, she may have gone outside actually to the telescope. We did have a Clara in the room. Clara Eimhart. I can't show you a picture of what she looked like because we don't have one at all. I know what her signature looked like. It's a bit strange we don't have a picture of her because her father made an awful, Georg Eimhart, made a lot of money making portraits of people. And what he did was he spent that money on astronomical instruments, okay? And he actually built this observatory on the bastion of the walls of Nuremberg Castle here. And it really was state-of-the-art instrumentation he had there. And he taught Marie Clara all sorts of things, how to draw, Latin, and how to make astronomical observations. And she was really good at it. And I want to just show this because it shows that unlike Cassini's, it's almost exactly the same time as Cassini's map. It's not as accurate as Cassini's map in terms of where things are positioned, but to me, it kind of looks like the moon, okay? It looks more like the moon than Cassini's very stylized map does. And that's important for the reason that I was interested in what she'd done, because she observed an eclipse, in fact, the year before she died. Now, we're used to eclipse pictures now, okay? So this was two pictures taken. The sun moves rather faster than Cassini could, on foot or by carriage. And here are two pictures taken in Argentina along the path of totality, about 13 minutes apart. And what you can see coming off down in the bottom left-hand corner here is what we call a coronal mass ejection. If you look very carefully, this bubble of the solar atmosphere that's coming out has moved further out in the 13 minutes between the two images, okay? Now, we were not surprised by that because we know that happens. But of course, it would have been a surprise to people in the past. And here's a modern equivalent. We don't need the moon anymore to make observations like that. We make our own. It's called a coronagraph. It's really a camera with a penny over the aperture to block out the sun. And so you can see these coronal mass ejections going off. We know that it happens, but in the past, you never had any information like this at all. But you could see the solar atmosphere in eclipse. So this one eclipse that she observed went right over Nuremberg. It was seen in Barcelona. There were reports. There was the siege of Barcelona going on in the War of Spanish Succession. There were two very famous people saw it from a tower in Montpellier. There was reports from Zurich. And then we know, saw it, and we knew she painted it. There were all these letters flying around from famous people who went to the observatory in Nuremberg, and they all commented, what a wonderful job, exactly what they had seen she had painted. Now, we don't have any paintings from that time of the solar atmosphere. And this shows you a history of different observations of the sun, along with the solar cycles. Every 11 years, the number of sunspots goes up and down. But there's this period between about 1650 and 1700 where there were virtually no sunspots. We call it the Maunder minimum. And we'd really like to know what was the sun like then? Okay. Now, it was very frustrating because we couldn't find out what her painting was. We had text descriptions, but it's not quite the same as seeing it. And then it was almost a miracle because they turned up her two paintings and they were found in a cellar in the Sitting Library of Berlin. It was thought they'd been destroyed in the Second World War. And what's interesting about it is there's no structure there at all. Okay, it's just a light. And we've actually done some simulations with colleagues of that. Okay, this is the magnetic field that put into it. What you're actually looking at here is not the normal magnetic corona that we see in an eclipse with all the nice structure. You're just seeing the effect of dust. It's the dominant scattering mechanism. It's called the F corona instead of the K corona. And so this is really nice evidence for us. There really wasn't much magnetic field at all coming out of the sun. And all this is using the moon as an instrument, really, as your occulting disk in a coronagraph. Okay? So that's why we got interested in Maria Clara. Brian, oh, sorry, yes. You're going to do some introducing.
Yes, I will introduce Brian, but we're going to go straight back to Troodos for just a second,
okay,
and
sure.
then we'll bring in Brian in 2 minutes. And we just thank you very much, Professor Lockwood. Yes, of course, for that. Hi, Agapios, you there? He's got us on. You got you on mute for just a second there. Thank you for coming back.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. If you wanted to point out where the Moon Maiden is again, because I think it's really great if you can, but also love to see images of the observatory at, I'm going to try it again, Troodos.
Ah, that's excellent. Okay, so I put the pointer back on the live feed. I hope you can see it. So the Moon Maiden is actually the southern tip of a formation known as Sinus Iridium on the moon. And if you use your imagination, you can probably pick it out. It doesn't help the fact that it's the way the image is oriented right now, the Moon Maiden is actually upside down. But yeah, anybody with even with a small telescope can pick it out fairly easily. It's a very, very distinct feature on the moon. And if you get the timing right and you observe when the lunar phase is just right, it really becomes apparent.
I am really eager for you to show people here your observatory that you've recently have taken.
Sure. Let me see if I can share this screen.
Something's changing. Whoa.
Is that coming through?
Yes.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of context. This is our beautiful observatory. We have to give props to the architects. They're a local firm here, visionary architects, called Tsolakis Group. And they envisioned landing a spaceship on the top of the mountain here in Troodos. And I think they got it absolutely right. The building sits atop the 1,250 meter mountain top near the village of Agridia, where we are now. And you can see how the design is just incredible. What you can't see, on the far left, we've got the dome building, which is where I am right now, coming to you. You can see between the dome building and the edge of the building on the other side, you can see our secondary observatory. There's a rolling roof there that's open. We use that during the day. We've got a solar telescope, and we use that during the day to do solar observing. And on the far right, you can see what we like to call our Astro Marina. So that's a place where we park our telescopes, not our yachts. And we use that to do constellation tours, stargazing, astrophotography, all these interesting things that we get to do from up here. And of course, you can see the view all around. It's just incredible. You've got the Troodos Mountains. And it's not really coming through in this photo, but from up here, we can see all the way down to the Mediterranean Sea on really, really clear days. And that's just incredible. Highly recommend that you pay us a visit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I did want them to see it because it's It's so brilliant. It's breathtaking. And do people get to go to the end of that platform? I see you have a fence there now. Is that for safety or playing tennis?
Yeah. It's free to go until that point where the fence is, where it's absolutely safe. And when you're standing there, I hope I could. I wish I could get a shot of the view from there and send it to you. The view is just incredible. We have open skies all around. We can see the summit of the mountain just across from us, and it's just incredible, really incredible.
Fabulous. Okay, we're going to go to our speaker, Brian Skidmore, with us, and then we'll come back to you, Agapios, for some questions and answers, and with our panel as well. So who we have with us tonight, Brian Skidmore. He's attended Nottingham University for degrees in chemistry and engineering and radio astronomy from the University of Manchester. And as a result, he's worked in space science, the industry, and currently for 16 years, and is currently the ground software lead at Surrey Satellite Technology Limited for the Lunar Pathfinder mission to the moon. Welcome, Brian. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I actually have two hats tonight. I'm going to be talking about Lunar Pathfinder, this new mission to the moon, but I'm also outreach coordinator for the Reading Astronomical Society. And of course, we're outside with our telescopes looking at the moon. So I thoroughly recommend that you do that because it is wonderful to look at the moon for the first time through a telescope. So I will get going once the here we are. On the screen at least, there we are. So I work for a company called Surrey Satellite Technology Limited, based in Guildford, or SSTL as we call it. And it's probably the most well-established small satellite company in the world. We've celebrated our 40th anniversary this year. And it's a wonderful company because it's like, I think of it as like an orchestra of engineers. In order to create a space mission, and we design and we build and we operate spacecraft, you have to bring together a wide variety of engineering disciplines. So thermal and radiation, flight software and ground software, and we all work together to create these missions. And one of the most exciting missions, probably the most exciting for me at least, is our first mission to the moon, which is called Lunar Pathfinder. And we've been working on this for several years, and it will be launched by SpaceX in the second half of next year. So we're really coming very close. How do I? It's right over here. So, Lunar Pathfinder, its primary purpose is to act as a data relay. It maybe doesn't sound very exciting, but it's an enabler for other missions, landers and orbiters, to get their data back to Earth. And that's crucially important for those spacecraft that are not powerful enough to do that, and they would otherwise have to depend on another spacecraft that went with them to provide that service, or for spacecraft that land on the far side of the moon. Now, note I'm saying far side, not dark side of the moon. That was Pink Floyd's idea and has confused everybody ever since. The far side, so the dark side is the side that faces away from the sun and only coincides with the far side when the moon is full. Anyway, that's a distraction. So, had to get Pink Floyd in there somewhere. So, for missions that land on the far side of the moon, they cannot see the Earth. And therefore, they have to use an orbiter to get their data back to Earth. And that's one of the things that Lunar Pathfinder will be doing. As it orbits the moon, it will see the far side as well, each orbit. And for any landers that are there, it will take their data. And then when it sees the Earth, as it comes around the other side of the moon, it will send that data back to Earth. So that's the purpose of the mission. So here we have a graphic of the mission and its capabilities. So on the left-hand side is its communication facility, and that's its primary purpose, as I mentioned. And if you're into radio communications, you'll understand about S-band and X-band. They're simply different frequencies. And so the spacecraft communicates with the missions around the moon and on the moon in S-band, which are the two circles on the left, using two different antennas rather. One is a directional antenna with a dish on the right-hand side, and the other one is a wideband antenna. But it also, on another face of the spacecraft, has an X-band antenna, and that is used to communicate with the Earth. And so it has to do those things sometimes simultaneously. And there's a lot of complicated mathematics about where it should point those antennas, how the spacecraft should orientate itself, while at the same time being pointed at the Earth to send the data back. So here is some real hardware. This is the spacecraft on the left-hand side, and you've got a cheery engineer on the left, and there's one hiding on the right-hand side, just to show the antenna, the solar panels, the two solar panels being deployed. And there we are, to do it again. So you can see the spacecraft is at a fairly advanced stage of development. It has a central thrust tube in the middle, which is for structural purposes. And then around it, it has various equipment, such as reaction wheels to ensure that the spacecraft is oriented to orientate the spacecraft. And there are all sorts of other things inside as well, such as recorders to record the data, and the lunar link radio and transponder, and so on, gyroscopes, etc., star sensors, sun sensors. And on the right-hand side, we have an animation of the directional antenna that is the one that will be used to communicate with the moon. And we're just illustrating here that it has a mechanism called an antenna pointing mechanism that will be attached to the spacecraft, and which allows the antenna to move in various orientations, particularly as it's passing a lander on the moon, or it's communicating with another orbiter around the moon. So this, sorry, actually, yes, I was going to say, this is one of the secondary payloads. This is what I meant to mention actually on the 2 slides before, is that the spacecraft isn't just communicating with other spacecraft and performing that data relay activity. It also has 3 other secondary payloads. So this is one of them. It's a rather beautiful object, and it's called a laser retroreflector. And it's being manufactured by NASA and delivered to us from them. And it consists of 48 mirrors. And the idea is that a laser from Earth will be pointed at this reflector, and it will be bounced back to Earth. And in so doing, establish exactly where Lunar Pathfinder is in 3D space at that time. So we have 2 other secondary payloads on the mission. I don't have pictures of them. One is a GPS experiment, because what we want to do around the moon is eventually provide a GPS-like service with a constellation of satellites orbiting the moon, just as we have on Earth for SatNav. And that's a follow-on program from Lunar Pathfinder called Moonlight. And what Lunar Pathfinder will be doing will be sort of proving that technology. And what it will do, this GPS receiver, is receive the signals from Earth and see if you can use them to establish location. And when we do this, we'll have broken the record for being the furthest spacecraft ever to have achieved this, assuming we do. We're pretty confident that we will. And the third one is a radiation monitor. That's the third secondary payload, to establish what the radiation environment is like around and near the moon. And it will be used in conjunction with this instrument. It's on the same panel, so that the location of where the measurements are being taken will be known very precisely. So this is how we will be taken to the moon. So we will be launched from the Kennedy Space Center by SpaceX and a Falcon 9 rocket. And we will, inside that rocket, we will be configured inside this bottle-shaped lander, this bottle-shaped vehicle that you see in gold here. This is called Elytra, and it's made by a company called Firefly, and that is the vehicle that will take us to the moon. And Lunar Pathfinder will actually be inside that. Now on top, you see another 2 vehicles. One is the Blue Ghost 2 lander, which is that object with the legs sitting on top. Yeah, as you can see, it's labeled. And that will land on the moon. And on top of that is an experiment called Lucy Night, which I forget the acronym now, but it's a radio astronomy experiment. The far side of the and this will land on the far side of the moon. So essentially, as Elytra gets to the moon, it will drop us off in orbit, Lunar Pathfinder in orbit, and then it will drop off the Blue Ghost lander with the Lucy Night experiment on top of it. It stands for Lunar Surface Electromagnetic Experiment. So I've got that right. Okay. So this is my final slide, but after this, I've got an animation as well. So this is what will land on the moon, and this will be our first customer. So the Lucy Night experiment is on the top, and it's got this, looks like a sort of helicopter with these two antennas. They're called dipoles. And the purpose of that experiment is to measure, or is to be a stepping stone on the way to measuring the radiation that come from the so-called dark ages of the universe. So the universe, the prevailing theory, the accepted theory of the creation of the universe is the Big Bang theory. And after 380,000 years, which is the universe had cooled down. So at the moment of the Big Bang, we have a hot, dense plasma, a soup of elementary particles and light, and that rapidly expands, and it also cools. And after 380,000 years, it cools to the point where we have neutral atoms. And then over a period which isn't precisely known, the first stars then form from gravity, and then that will light up the universe. So between the neutral atoms forming and the beginning of the first stars is the dark ages of the universe. And you can't detect this from Earth because it's swamped by electromagnetic interference from human activity, but also the ionosphere prevents much of that radiation getting through. So radio astronomers really want to get to this signal, and the far side of the moon is probably the best place in the whole solar system to do that work because it's entirely shielded from the Earth by the bulk of the moon itself. And so this is a pathfinder experiment to get to on the road to getting to that position of measuring that crucial signal. Now that experiment is designed to last for 2 years on the far side of the moon. And it will and that's extraordinary because it will have to survive the lunar nights, and the lunar night can plunge to minus 123 degrees centigrade, so it's exceptionally cold, and the lights, the day side can also be similarly can reach 120 degrees centigrade. So there's extreme temperature range that it has to survive, and nobody has actually done that before for such a long period. Anyway, over that 2 years, Lunar Pathfinder will gather the science data from this experiment and then send it back to Earth. So that's the Lunar Pathfinder mission, launching next year, as I say, hopefully. And I actually have an animation as well of the deployment that shows the deployment of the spacecraft. So this will show the Elytra night vehicle deploying Lunar Pathfinder and also the Blue Ghost lander. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian. So I think what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to Agapios. So you're welcome to still stay in. We have the room for another 30 minutes or so. And we're going to bring Mike and Brian and have them sit down here at the table. You guys can ask questions to your heart's desire. We'll be looking at the moon from Cyprus, so you'll still be seeing the moon in the comfort of this room. And people are welcome definitely to go back and forth. We do have to vacate this room eventually at 9:30, but we're okay to stay for now. And if the gentleman wouldn't mind taking a seat, you're welcome to make yourself comfortable down here. And Agapios, can you hear us? You see, we have you on mute.
Hi, everyone. Still here.
We still have some people here. And I guess if anyone have any questions, you can raise your hand. We're hoping to pass you the microphone so that we could get you recorded. Anyone, any questions? Yes, I see one here. I will be, I guess, handing the mic around. Excuse me.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for a wonderful evening. This has been fantastic. I have a question about the Lunar Pathfinder presentation. There were, from memory, sorry if I've got this wrong, from memory there were 3 antennae on the device. One talked to Earth and 2 of them talked to the moon. Have I got that right? And I wondered why there are 2 different antennae talking to the moon.
Great question.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you very much. Yeah, fine. So that gave me a bit of time to think about the question. So the reason why is that allows us to do 2 simultaneous communications with 2 different assets at the same time. And each of those antennae has different characteristics. One is directional and one is wideband. And they both have advantages for different situations. Okay. Pleasure.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Of course, Professor Lockwood, yes.
Brian. Will Pathfinder be available for use after the first mission? Is it a long-term facility?
Yes, it is a long-term facility. It's an 8-year mission.
8 years.
On the microphone, please. If you can answer on the microphone.
Sorry. I'll have the mic.
Astronomers and space scientists who just can't get their act together. So yes, it's a long-term mission. It's designed to be 8 years. And so we are talking to other customers. So those customers actually require a special device, which is the end user terminal, so that they are compatible with Lunar Pathfinder. And that's made by a company called Vulcan Wireless, or VW, or Volkswagen, as we call them. But anyway, so yes, and they're also based in the States. But unfortunately, because I'm ground software lead, I don't get to travel to the States very much. It's a bit of an insular role. I tend to work with the ground segment providers. So we have to use very large dishes around the world to communicate with the moon and Lunar Pathfinder. So I'm working with them mainly.
Any of those dishes from Jodwell or any participants from Goonhilly or anything?
Goonhilly will be a partner in the later on in the mission for Moonlight, I believe. So we're looking at Valham, which is a DLR dish, and also ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization.
Very exciting to be landing another object on the far side of the moon. China's done it. I think this would be the first time anyone outside of China has landed something on the far side.
No, there was a China. Gosh, I'm not very good at remembering all these different missions because there are so many of them. But there has been a successful landing this year on the far side of the moon and return samples, which is quite extraordinary. Yeah, China's done that.
Also
China's been amazing this year.
Yes, they have.
Have been extraordinary.
The reason I actually asked that question was that there's a radio telescope array, LOFAR, that's already in existence. I mean, it's fundamentally comes out of Holland, but there's stations in Ireland and all over Europe now, and they want to put a station on the far side of the moon. So I was wondering if you're going to be available to provide this service to them. I think it's TU Delft are the people you need to talk to. Yeah.
Okay, and any questions about the moon that Agapios is wonderfully streaming for us? You can ask him any questions or about the interface that he's using.
I have a question actually for him.
Please do.
I showed Maria Clara's painting of the moon and Cassini's, and it's quite hard to tie up the locations, not just because it's upside down, but have things changed much in terms of the orbital characteristics of the moon that mean things aren't quite in the same position as they were in 1650? Do we know that?
I wouldn't think that that's the reason why it looks different. I think there is a lot of artistic, how do you say it? There's a lot of the artist's perspective thrown into that.
Well, and also their determination of directions was not as good as with. But it is quite hard to line it up. I tried quite hard to find an exact taco and all the mares in the right place, and it was quite hard to find it. So and with Cassini's as well. So I just wondered if things had changed a little over the 300 years. There we go.
No, but what I can say to that is that what you're seeing on your screens now is the result of so many years of advancements in digital technology. I mean, the high quality of the sensors that we're using today, and just the level of fidelity that we can get through telescopes today is just incredible, especially compared to how things looked 20 years ago when digital imaging was just beginning to come through. So even in that short time span, things look incredibly much better today than what they did back then.
Can I just make a comment? Your question was that the moon, because of tidal forces, will always keep the same face to us. And it's even if it's perturbed, even if the moon was perturbed over time, it would still end up having the same face towards us. That's because the moon is a very substantial object. And because it's substantial, the near side of the moon feels a stronger force towards the Earth than the far side. And that gives it a very slightly elliptical shape. And if it is not rotating synchronously as it orbits the Earth, then it will be pulled back into synchronicity. And so when the moon was formed, we can talk about that, the moon was originally spinning a lot faster, and it would have been pulled into synchronicity with its orbit within quite a short time scale. In addition, because of the tides that are raised on the Earth, and because of the Earth's rotation, that bulge towards the moon is slightly offset. And the result of that is that the Earth is slowing down, the rotation of the Earth is slowing down, and because of conservation of angular momentum, the moon is moving further away. So it was much closer to us when it was first formed. It was about 2.5 times closer to us than it is today. So imagine the moon 2.5 times the diameter that it is today. And it's moving away from us about 3 centimeters, I think it is, a year, which is about the rate at which your fingernails are growing. And it will continue to do that, and it will continue to have the same face towards us.
I just want to check with the audience. Did anyone come in having looked at the moon outside? Yeah. So how are the skies?
Really beautiful, actually.
Oh, lucky to have good weather. But thank you, Agapios, for being here. Mike?
Can I just pick up on Brian's point? We've been doing some work on eclipses from going back 600-700 years that are well timed, and from them we can actually work out the rate of slowing of Earth's rotation, because the eclipses, but you need the time to be, normally it says immediately after sunrise or something like that, and so you know the timing of it, and we can actually see the change in Earth's rotation speed. But you have to go back, 1,000 years or so.
That's amazing. You pick that up.
Yeah. About to be published in monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society.
Thank you for that plug, Mike. Any questions? Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, I'll be right there with the microphone. Coming right up. That's all right.
Thank you. Brian, quick question about blue Ghost and
Yeah, Blue Ghost.
Pathfinder.
Yes.
What happens if Blue Ghost doesn't land properly?
Well,
Because I'm assuming it separates before.
yes, as you saw in the animation. I mean, you know, if it doesn't land properly, I mean, we've had some failures this year of landing on the moon. If it doesn't land properly, it could be game over. We just don't know. The premise is that it'll work, but it's extremely risky, and it's a very audacious lander as well, because as I mentioned, it has to survive vast ranges in temperature. It's heated by a considerable battery, which sits on top of Blue Ghost 2, but underneath the experiment, that sort of dipole that I showed you. And it also has a radiation, so that when it's very hot, it could reflect that heat. So it has active and passive ways to maintain its temperature, but nevertheless, it's still extremely audacious, and it is very risky. You're absolutely right. So there could be all sorts of scenarios in which things fail, and if it does, we won't be able to. If it doesn't gather science and or it fails catastrophically, then obviously we won't be able to bring back its data. So it is predicated on it succeeding. It's a great question.
I have a question up here from
Yes.
a very curious individual. I'm over here on, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Hello. Hello.
What will happen? Why is the moon moving away?
Oh, that's a great question. It's quite difficult to answer that one. So as the Earth spins and it's tugging the bulge of the sea, it's the tides, it's losing energy. Because it loses energy, something else in the system has to gain the same amount of energy. We call that energy is conserved, which is complicated, but it's kept the same. So if one part of a system loses energy, another piece of the system must gain the energy, unless that energy is lost in some other way. So when that happens, the moon will gain energy. That means it spins, it goes around the Earth faster. And if it goes around the Earth faster, that means it has to be further, has to move further away. It's a great question. I don't know if have I explained it okay? Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, okay.
You may have been asked this already because I was out of the room, but the actual speed in which the information is translated from the Pathfinder back to, say, whoever you're sending it to, because it didn't seem like it was very fast.
What made you say that?
The bands and, you know, how fast it is.
So the bands are, sorry? The baud rate. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes. So the data rate. So the data rate isn't high compared to terrestrial standards. That's true. So it's a bit like the beginning of the internet. And the reason is because you're at a considerable distance. And it's all to do with what's called the link budget between the Earth and the spacecraft. And it's to do with how much power. And it's a big trade-off between between all sorts of things to do with the environment, the mass of the spacecraft, and so on. And so it's a sort of compromise. A spacecraft is a compromise of all the different factors that go into creating it. But the upshot that yes, these bit rates are not vast, but we're not talking necessarily about vast amounts of data either. And Lucy Knight, they understand what the bit rates are. And we're so much at the beginning of communications at the moon that it's got a long way to catch up before it can catch up with today's standards. Well, it depends how much data is being sent, but the data rate that's being gathered is commensurate with the data rate to Lunar Pathfinder, so it will be able to get all its data back at some point. Yeah, at some point. Yeah, but you know, it'll be stored on Lunar and brought back, and so it won't all be stored on Lunar and then all sent back. It'll be sent in files, effectively, in bits, and be sent back.
I have this image of scientists looking at the screen, waiting for their data.
So
that is probably going to happen, yeah.
So just to show you, we switched on our screen to just a full view of the lunar disk. This was the clean feed that we had gotten approval from NASA to provide them with today. And this is also from Troodos and Cyprus via Agapios. Fortunately, as you know, the U.S. government had a shutdown, and that meant that anything that NASA's part of, including NASA's own International Observe the Moon night, they're not able to share our live feed, our clean feed from Cyprus. But we're going to do it for you, so here you are. You can see it now. Any questions? Any other questions about the moon, or Agapios, or Troodos, or from our speakers tonight? Oh, God, okay.
Oh, yeah. Right at that, that's all right.
It's helping me recover from the flu. Thanks, Mike. It's a good thing I'm wearing a tracksuit today. Okay, here you go.
Should have come halfway at least. Sorry about that.
Oh,
No, thanks for a fantastic evening. I just wondered if somebody would talk us through, looking at the moon there, the sequence of the impact craters and what that tells us about the, the life history of the moon.
Well, we do have Agapios in Cyprus, if that's something you could do, or we also have Brian or Mike here. So Agapios, is that anything you want to try for today?
No, I don't know very much about the sequence. I think it's random, effectively, over the moon. It's not like one area was covered and then the next area. They're clearly craters that are on top of the darker volcanic, the frozen lava flows, which are the mare, are clearly younger. So you can date relatively the impacts with respect to one another. And the moon itself is aged by radioisotope dating. I think the elements involved are uranium, thorium, and potassium. So they had very long half-lives. So the lunar samples that are brought back by the Apollo astronauts give a scientist the best data, because we actually have samples that can be radioisotope dated. And there's also another technique with zirconium crystals, I believe. But I think Mike.
I can't answer the question. It's funny you should ask it, because I was sat there looking at Tycho and thinking, wonder how long that's been there. So I have no idea. But there's an interesting scientific point behind that, because one of the things that we'd like to do with the moon is that in the rocks, there would be a record of the energetic particle bombardment that's been happened. And so if you know, and that's exposed when a lot depends on when the craters form and how recently that rock was exposed. And so the whole business of when craters formed could become really important, because that becomes datable, and then you can start to build a long-term variation of the sort of radiation exposure that the moon has had. So it's going to be a question that a lot of people want to answer soon, well, at some point in the future.
Agapios, is there anything you wanted to chime in about craters on the moon?
Yes, well, the only thing I can add to those two excellent explanations given by the people before me is that, and it's a bit of a push to the audience to just go for the moon and try and observe it as much as you can, because the craters, the rills, the mountaintops, the shadows cast by the lunar landscape, it's just so incredible. And often people seem to overlook just how beautiful the moon can be on any given night. Assuming you have a clear sky, just go for it with whatever instrument you have, even with the naked eye. There's just so many things to see on it. I find it incredibly inspiring. Of course, it was the first object I got to see through my first telescope many, many years ago, but it never ceases to amaze and inspire.
Well, we want to get it recorded. That's okay. Oh, I can repeat it. It's okay. I'm halfway there now. No, please don't apologize. It's all good.
I was just going to ask him how frequent are impacts happening on the moon, and using a telescope, is it possible to, how many are captured live actually happening, and the dust that might emit from that? Are people observing it now?
I don't know of any observations of, but there is an issue with the dust. The Apollo astronauts noticed there were these plumes of dust rising up from the lunar surface. And actually, Tim Stubbs, who was a PhD student of mine, went to NASA to actually look at them, to investigate them after he'd finished his PhD with me. And it's quite interesting because lunar dust is ghastly stuff. It's unbelievably abrasive. It's really, really nasty. And but it seems there's some electrodynamic forcing that just causes these eruptions of dust. Say the Apollo astronauts noticed them, and we weren't sure, but actually now we've got data that shows that yes, this happens periodically. And one of the things that may well be it is small meteorite impacts and things like that that are raising stuff from the surface. I don't know that we've ever seen a major cratering event on the moon. And I can't say that for sure, though. In history, maybe somebody did, but I don't know.
Well, we saw Beresheet crashed into the moon. We got to observe that. I thought.
Oh yeah,
didn't we?
yeah. No. Oh, did we observe that?
I thought there was a probe actually sent into the moon that we did observe.
yes.
That's,
And
you're right. It wasn't Beresheet.
Yeah. Yes, we man-made object we've seen hit the moon. Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying that there's an orbiter of the moon, long-term one called Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and I believe that it has noticed some differences, but they are subtle. So the vast majority of the craters on the moon are very ancient. So the moon, the solar system, when it was first formed, about 4.5 billion years ago, and the moon was thought to have formed shortly afterwards, was a very violent place, and there are vastly more collisions than there are today. And the planets that we have, the terrestrial planets, took time to settle down, and there were much more sort of smaller planetesimals around. And what you see today is the result of these collisions and everything settling down. So most of the craters are actually very ancient, but there certainly must be impacts, but not impacts of the size of, the Tyche crater, which is the very bright one at the bottom there, or Copernicus. So not ones that you could see with your naked eye. I don't believe so. It's not impossible, of course, but it would be exceedingly rare.
What I love about Tyche is you can see just how far.
Yes, the ejector. So so you see the rays coming from the crater. That is the result of ejector from the collision. And it's quite, it's a relatively young crater, otherwise that would have all been buried.
And maybe you can speak to why it hasn't moved or eroded or changed much.
Yes, there's nothing to change it. There's no erosion on the moon. There's no atmosphere to cause erosion. So it's pristine, really. And that's why samples from the moon are of great scientific interest. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm staying up here in case there's any other questions up here, and I see one. That was a smart choice of mine. Oh, look, she's going to meet me part way. Oh, thank you.
How does a new crater form and how is it named?
Well, it's formed. We know it's something has hit the moon. Okay, it's probably happened a long time ago, and I don't think we've ever seen a crater being formed. It would be quite a sight to see. So it's something that's in an object that's hit the moon, and where objects hit the moon, it's not uniform. One side there are parts of the moon that are much more cratered than other parts, and I think we understand that. But how are they named? It's normally a question who first saw them and what they decided to call it. And I think they're not named after people or things like that. They just were given names historically, and we still use them. I think that's correct. Yeah. It's a good question.
I see the moon's moving a bit. I guess Agapios fixing things on the telescope inside.
Yeah, it's a telescope, not the moon.
Yeah.
Do you know why I'm doing that?
Why is that? Go ahead and tell us.
It's such a great night tonight. The image looks like it's fake. So I'm just jotting the telescope a little bit to make it for the viewers to make sure that it's a live view.
Yep, yes, good idea. Especially these days. Yes. Go ahead, Brian.
One thing I was going to say is that although it seems obvious, not obvious, but it's very well established that the craters are a result of objects hitting the moon, but it wasn't always accepted. It used to be thought to be due to volcanism, ancient volcanism, creating these apertures or these indentations in the surface.
Any other questions? I know the moon is setting, and we're hoping it. I think it's going to go behind a tree outside at some point. Do you want to speak to that, Mike?
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to mention that although we haven't seen anything that caused cratering on the moon, we did watch a series of parts of a comet that had broken up hit Jupiter, and that we could see each hit on the gas giant of there was a comet called Schumacher-Levy. Yes, and I know how comets are named. It's the first 3 people to see them. This one broke up and the parts crashed into Jupiter, and we were able to watch that.
Yeah, that was extraordinary, actually. If you ever look that up on YouTube and watch a video of that impact of that comet, was it 93, 1994? So by coincidence, one of those discoverers, so the comet was called Shoemaker-Levy, which disintegrated in the gravitational field of Jupiter, and the tidal forces of Jupiter broke up that comet into pieces, and then they all hit Jupiter one by one, and it made a sort of blackened spot in the atmosphere of Jupiter. Absolutely extraordinary. Now, Eugene Shoemaker, although he was a comet discoverer, he made his career training NASA astronauts how to walk on the moon. And he was instrumental in understanding the age of the moon and the sequence of, due to cratering. So there's a sort of full story there of collisions in a comet being named after him, which caused collisions with Jupiter, and him also training astronauts about and understanding cratering on the moon himself. So there's a kind of interesting story there.
I learned an interesting fact today about Shoemaker. Apparently, they had his ashes sent to the moon, but it crashed. So his ashes are.
Oh, is that right?
Technically, he's
yes,
like
I think that's true. Yes,
the first person buried on the moon, kind of. I mean,
extraordinary.
Yeah, spread on the moon. I like it. Yeah.
One thing about
Wasn't Levy's wife also involved?
Yes, they are both astronomers. So very sadly, Eugene. Well, it's a bit of a depressing thing to say. He was actually killed, and they were involved in the
discovery of the.
May well have been. Yes, it may be 3 of them. So the 2 Shoemakers, and then David Levy.
Oh, it's 2 Shoemakers.
Maybe yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Eugene Shoemaker and Caroline Shoemaker. But very sadly, Eugene was killed in a car accident in the States. Very sad. Anyway, yeah. So he's one of the great icons. It's one of the great icons of lunar science and also astronaut training on the moon.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, James. How's the moon been looking outside? It's setting. Is that correct?
The moon is actually rising, and it's getting in the way of the tree. I mean, the tree is getting in the way of the moon a little bit, and on a couple of telescopes. But we have probably about 8 other telescopes that are looking at the moon. It's super clear. We have Cyprus-like weather, maybe not Cyprus-like temperature. We're also looking at Saturn as well with 2 or 3 of the bigger telescopes. And so you can see the rings of Saturn as well at the moment. Yeah.
So do we want to get people outside a little bit more?
If you haven't been, I strongly suggest you do.
Yeah. But of course, we want to thank Agapios in Cyprus. Agapios, is there any last words you want to tell us from Cyprus?
Just want to wish everybody a great rest of the night. It's been incredible joining you as always. It's a beautiful night here, so got a lot of streaming left to do. Just enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll hand it back over to James to wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Agapios. That's fantastic. You could provide that stream for us, and you're more than welcome to come over to Reading anytime and give us a lovely seminar. Teach me how to use a telescope properly.
Anytime.
Of course, I'd like to go over there too.
We're more than happy to welcome anybody visiting this part of the world to the Troodos Observatory. More than happy to see you here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right, so we'll go ahead and close the session here. But thank you for coming in the room. And yeah, there's still lots to see outside and there's no rush. Also, the demonstration desk is still there with a moon. Yeah, so it's 9:40 p.m. The telescope's starting to pack down. So that's in about 20 minutes. Yeah, and also the demonstration desk in about 20 minutes will start to pack down as well. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thanks to everyone for coming and to all the volunteers that helped and yeah, hosting was amazing. Thank you. Yeah, very lucky to have you. Yeah, thank you.
Grab the mic from That's great. Great to have all this support. Oh, we had lots of support.
Yeah, we just went. There was so much.
I think I got the mic off. Oh, no, actually.
Yeah.